You're going to introduce what we are, United Adoration.
Well, I think we should be introducing now since we're officially starting.
Great.
So, well, everybody, hey, thanks for joining us. My name is Dave Frincke. I'm the movement leader for United Adoration, and I'm here with Rachel Wilhelm, who is our United States team leader, and Justin Carlson. We're really excited that you could join us, and we're gonna be chatting today. And actually, I don't even know. I know Rachel told me you're from Kentucky, but I don't know even know exactly where in Kentucky.
Lexington.
I think I drove through there going to Florida one time.
Maybe you did.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Rachel knows. But yeah, man, thanks for taking time out of your day and
of course,
and to hang out with us. So
it's good to be here.
Justin is a friend, and I met him for the first time physically in January at the Trinity. Trinity School of Ministry? Is that what it's called?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, TSM. In Pittsburgh and or Ambridge. And it was really a treat to finally get to meet Justin. I'd known him through a group called Liturgy Fellowship that we're both a part of, and it's been such a blessing to us for many years, to a lot of people. I've listened to and been a fan of Justin's music. And then when I met him in January, it was really awesome because we were able to do some co-writing together. And we wrote a really cool song called He Can Take It, which I'm super proud of. We need to record it sometime, Justin. Something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to ask Justin to interview with us just because I know he's such a great songwriter and he's a great church musician. He's been doing this for years, and we really want to dive into your songwriting journey, Justin, and just hear what that's been about, and also how you write songs for your own church and your local context and what that looks like. So first, I just want to ask, what does your songwriting journey look like? I mean, when did you first start writing songs?
Yeah, it has been a very interesting journey, and in many ways, I feel like I have entered really into a season in the last few years, moving to Lexington, of learning more about myself and how I'm wired, and in a lot of ways, just feel like I'm beginning to really own the artist songwriting piece that God has given me. But I would say I probably started writing songs like all the way back to 8th grade. My dad was a Christian singer-songwriter for years in the 80s, kind of probably started late 70s, but into the 80s. Pete Carlson, Living in the Name of Love. It's crazy. I meet people every now and then who are like, wait, your dad was Pete Carlson? And It's just kind of wild to hear about the connections. But so I think I wrote my first song in 8th grade for a talent show. And it was a pretty heavy song.
What was it about? Like, the 8th grade songs are the best because they're just about like the most intense.
It was about divorce. So I just dove right in. Yeah. Welcome to the talent show. Our first song is about divorce.
Did you win the talent show?
I don't think there was. I don't know if there were winners and losers. I can't remember. But I'm sure they probably didn't. I'm sure they didn't want to give the gold medal to a song about divorce. But I'm being so real, you know.
But you were real before it was cool to be real.
I know.
I mean, yeah. And then, you know, in high school, I plugged into my youth worship team and, you know, kind of dabbled here and there writing songs. And then into college, I started to do it more. And it really wasn't, I don't know. I think there was always a part of me that was kind of entangled in a lot of fear and just like, I don't know if I want to put myself out there, and I would get a taste of it and really like it, but then I think there would still be a lot of trepidation about it. But I think it really has been in the context of the church where I have been affirmed and where I have been challenged. After college, I did a youth ministry internship in Memphis, Tennessee, and just happened to stumble into leading worship for their evening service. And then our time was up there. I got married about a year into that. And we moved back to Nashville. My wife actually got a position at a church doing youth ministry. And I was like, man, I'm going to try my hand at this songwriting thing in Nashville. I grew up in Nashville. It was familiar territory, but, it did not take me long to realize, man, I just don't enjoy this. Not songwriting in general, but just trying to write songs that kind of for the country music scene. I mean, I was co-writing with people and connecting with people really just for the sole purpose of writing songs that would get cut. And there's a place for that. And there are people who are wired that way and gifted that way. I just realized pretty soon, I'm like, there's just no joy in this for me. I didn't enjoy it. I felt like I couldn't write the songs that I wanted to write. I felt like I was forced to write songs that I just didn't really enjoy, but they were catchy and all that. And, and so it was frustrating because I felt like, okay, I still want to write songs, but I just don't know where I fit, because I also knew that I didn't want to be a touring artist. I tried that briefly and just felt like, man, this is just not for me. And it was more like, I just don't see our marriage being wired in such a way that this is going to bless my family.
Yeah.
So I think when I really started to take the songwriting stuff seriously was when I moved from Nashville to Roanoke, Virginia. Took a job at a Church of the Holy Spirit, an Anglican church in Roanoke. And that really was like a wild card for me. I didn't know anything about Virginia, hardly. It was a new denomination, but in a lot of ways I kind of came to life there as a worship leader, but really started to write songs thinking about the church. I'd really never written worship music up to that point.
Was there something that sparked that, or did you move there with the intention of wanting to engage in that way, or was it the environment when you were there, or the atmosphere? Like what made that transition mentally for you?
Well, that's a good question. I actually moved there to be the young adults pastor. They had created this position, and in about maybe not even 6 months into my time there, the interim worship guy moved away, and Quig Lawrence, the pastor, said, "Hey man, you want to do this?" And I said, "Well, why not?" And again, it was just another way that God kind of just pushed me in a position that I wasn't really looking for, and I really found that I thrived in that place. And I think, again, I had written a lot of songs up to that point, but more just singer-songwriter stuff. And I think because I felt more connected to this church and started to feel more rooted in, or maybe even feeling more called to doing things within the worship paradigm, I was like, man, I'm going to just try to write some songs. And, I didn't write a ton for the church, but I think it started there was something that started to develop there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Now, a few years into my time in Virginia, I got a phone call from a pastor in Kentucky, and it was a church, Tate's Creek Presbyterian Church. They were planning to plant a church in the downtown area of Lexington, and they really valued having kind of having the lead pastor, but they also were like, we really want to hire someone full time that takes over the music and the arts. Like, we really want that to be central to how we plant and what we value. And they reached out to me, and I went home and told my wife that the pastor had called, and she said, well, did you tell him we're not coming? And I said, well, no, I didn't. I did not tell him that, but I'd be surprised if we moved, because we loved Roanoke. We were surprised how much we loved it. And it really became, we had 2 of our 3 kids there, and just felt like this is kind of where we want to be. We love this church and this place. But when I went to, it wasn't really an interview. It was really like, hey, come to Lexington, just check it out, see if you like it. And we were in an interview, kind of a round table with some of their leaders. And the way I described it, I felt like parts of my heart were waking up in that meeting.
Oh, wow.
More from an artist standpoint, just feeling like, man, this could be a place where I could really flourish fully as an artist. And because in Roanoke, it wasn't that they weren't holding me back or saying I couldn't do things. I just didn't have the time to do the things that I wanted, because I was essentially doing young adults ministry and worship ministry, and it was just hard. And so there was just this shift that started to happen. And what's interesting is my wife kind of picked up on it before I did, and really was like, wow, this really could be a place where Justin could flourish in ways that he never has.
That's cool. God bless our wives.
Yeah, no kidding.
Or husbands.
Yeah.
Rachel.
Yes. I've flourished. We've been here, gosh, almost 5 years, I think. 5 years in July.
Wow.
And I have flourished artistically, musically, in ways that I never have. But what's interesting is, and this actually plays a lot into my creative process, but anxiety and depression has always, for probably over a decade, has been a reality for me. And when we moved to Lexington, it got worse. And I don't think that wasn't because, this isn't the right place, or I think there was this tension that I felt between God's clear calling on my life and just that internal struggle that those who struggle with that have, and just feeling like, this is going to be where I'm found out. People are going to realize I'm a fraud, all those things.
Why would you feel like a fraud? Is it because you started out not doing church music, or can we dive into that just a little bit? Not that I want to be your therapist, but just, I think I want to get into the mind of a songwriter, especially a church songwriter.
Yes.
Because there is a war that goes on in there. Yep. And I war with it myself, and I just want to hear someone else say it instead of me.
Yeah. Are you a licensed therapist?
No.
I'm just kidding.
I know.
I'm kidding. No, okay. So 2019 was just a really hard year for me. One of the hardest ones I've had, not circumstantially, just emotionally, spiritually. But it was by far the most fruitful year creatively of my life. And what I've had to learn as I've wrestled through this stuff is what it kind of means to be to steward well our pain and our suffering, that all those things we experience can be Genesis moments. I use the language of Fujimura, Makoto Fujimura. He's a Japanese American artist, and has written a lot on faith and culture and
Culture
he has
care. Yeah.
culture care. Yeah. And that's one of his or G's, I'm sorry, 3 G's, is Genesis moments, basically taking these moments of suffering, of hardship, and making something beautiful out of them. And I've reflected some just on 2019 and just thinking, wow, it's wild that in the midst of my hardest year, I was writing a lot and writing some of the best stuff I've written. And I think some of that is just, there is something about digging into those things and stewarding it that reveals, I think, the heart of God that we often miss when we just pretend like everything's okay. And Rachel, I know you talk a lot about lamentation, and I always try to get that language flowing kind of in our midst and just telling people like, hey, you actually can go to God and be really honest and shout and scream. Like he can handle it.
Yeah.
In fact, he's already given you the language, in the book of Psalms.
Well, so that was your co-write together, wasn't it? He can take it. Is that what the premise of that song?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is about that. But I think in terms of the internal struggle and feeling like a fraud, I mean, some of it is just simply me buying into the lies that I am those things, when circumstantially everything is saying otherwise. Work's going well. I'm writing songs that are resonating with people, but there's just still part of me that's like, man, at some point people are going to realize that these really aren't that great, and I really don't know what I'm doing. And some of it may be, I constantly feel like I'm behind. If you imagine a kind of a long line of this is life lived, that there are these markers along the line that I should have hit at this age. And I think, oh man, I'm so far behind. And it's like, by whose standard? And I just have to, it's just this constant returning to, okay, who is God? What has he said about me? How does he view the world? How does he understand time and accomplishment and all that? And so it really, a lot of it is just kind of this daily process of repentance and trust. But I do think some of it is just the way I found myself into what I'm doing now. It's just taken a while, but it doesn't kind of suddenly eradicate all the other things I've done in the past. Because I wasn't just randomly, it wasn't like, oh, I think I'll go to Virginia. That sounds like fun. It really, Roanoke was a very clear, it was like, God, I think we're supposed to go Roanoke. And I think it was just part of the process. And so, I mean, in a lot of musically, a lot of my training is just more self-taught. And so it's easy for me to feel intimidated by, someone who's brilliant and classically trained and all that. And my pastor here, when I first moved here, he's like, man, you just got to tell on yourself. You've all these fears that you store up, they're really just vain imaginations. And so I've just had some conversations with people who I'm just like pretty upfront with, like, hey, I'm kind of intimidated by you. And I feel like if we work together, you're going to realize I'm full of it. And it's so liberating, because a lot of the time those people are like, oh, I've kind of had those feelings too. And from the outside looking in, you kind of think, oh, you're crazy. But I think that's probably how people look at me sometimes and like, how could you think that? And
well, so many of the artists that we know and talk with, we all struggle with actually the same things. And and part of it is the culture in which we find ourselves artistically in the church, where we always feel, maybe not always, but so many people feel like I'm not qualified, to bring my offering to the community. because I'm not a professional, or I've never been trained, or I don't get paid for it, or I'm not famous. And it's amazing what that does to us. And it just kind of puts artistic expression in this straitjacket kind of thing, where it's like, it just continues to lessen the pool of artistic expression in the church when we allow those feelings to take over us, and thank God for a community and a pastor who helped walk you through that. That's encouraging to me.
Yeah, that's a good word. I would say first, being in a place where the arts are valued, where original content is valued, gosh, it has been really good for my soul. And it's almost it's been to the extent that my pastor has been very protective of my time. I mean, there are a lot more like pastoral duties I could probably take on, and he a lot of the time purposefully protects me from those things because he really values me as an artist. And it's not even like I don't think he could do this. It's just like he doesn't need to do it, and that's not really what we hired him to do. I've got a friend in Knoxville who's a worship pastor, and I challenged him recently, man. I'm like, you got to go to your pastor and say you need more time to create, because he's wearing two hats at his church as well. He's doing pastoral duties, but he's a brilliant songwriter. And when I talked to him, it'd probably been a year. He's like, man, I've written a song, and I'm like, man, that can't happen. And it's taken me a community. It's taken a community for me to realize that I need to be protective of my creativity. I need to be protective of these blocks of time that I create to write.
Yeah. How do you do that? So how do you can you be uber practical? Like, how do you be intentional with family, wife and kids and ministry, job that we all know it's more of a lifestyle than a job because it just is all engrossing, How do you practically do that? How do you carve out time? How do you protect time?
Well, my family's probably the first thing to go. I'm just kidding.
I was like, wait.
No, maybe that's too dark. Sorry. No, I'm thankful that my job description is one that I'm able to build. I'm able to have blocks of time in my week, kind of work hours where I'm writing. And I really try to, I try to protect those. They can kind of shift week to week, but for me, so one block of time is like 2 to 5 on Fridays. And that's in my schedule. And then there's another block somewhere else. A lot of the time I am more of a night owl, and my wife goes to bed pretty early. That there's some evenings where I write. I try. It's changed. I feel like we have 3 kids. It becomes a little harder to do this, but I really try 2 to 4 times a year to do a writing retreat where I go away for 48 hours by myself to a cabin, going to that songwriting workshop in Ambridge is part of that. And my wife values that so much that it's just not hard. I don't have to make this strong case to leave for 48 hours.
That's great.
That rhythm has been built into our lives for a number of years, that sometimes she's the one that's like, man, I really would love for you to get a writing retreat in the next couple months. So I think, there is the weekly time, kind of viewing it weekly and then maybe monthly, but also like quarterly. Like if I could take where I could go away for 2 nights, 4 times a year, that fills up my tank for a while.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's been really good for me to have projects that I'm writing toward. I've had writing retreats where I just go and it's like, let's just see what happens. And those can be a little more frustrating. But a lot of time when I feel like the past few times I've gone, I've had in mind, like, okay, here's some projects I'd love to pursue, or here's a body of work that I'd like to build upon. But I do think, you can set all those practical pieces, but you still have to protect it. And it's easy to make anything more urgent than creativity. Like, oh man, I need to send this email. It's like, you really don't. Like,
That's right.
you really do have to fight for it. And
why? I mean, why is that? I find that in myself. Is it like the enemy or something? It's sort of like I relate it to kind of like avoiding reading my Bible kind of thing. It feels like that.
yeah.
Where you think of any excuse not to do it, or making dinner, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
those are kind of the same thing.
Yeah, similar things. But I find that, when it comes to creating, it's a lot harder for me to just sit down and quietly work on something. It almost has to be this, like, I catch a melody in the air and I've got to finish it and write it down really quick, and then I work on it. This whole quarantine time has taught me how to just sit down and start working, which is like pulling teeth sometimes. But like, why do you think that is, Justin? What have you experienced when it comes to like just getting down to some of the nitty gritty songwriting stuff, like making yourself do it?
Yeah, I think some of it is just good old fashioned like discipline, like just sit down. And I think what I've had to learn and what I continue to learn is I can sit down for 2 hours and get up and feel like I have nothing. Like, man, and it's easy for me to be like, man, what a waste of time. But what I realize is the next time I sit down and it just kind of, just happens so quickly, I'm like, man, the 2 hours that I spent last week that seemed a waste of time somehow played into this time. I just think the creative process kind of builds on itself.
Absolutely.
And I just think that's part of the discipline of it. I mean, you probably do have songwriters who only write when they feel inspired. And I just don't know how you can sustain that, because I don't know. I spend so much energy doubting myself and, hating myself sometimes. I'm like, I don't have any energy to like feel inspired.
I know what you mean.
That it's like if I'll sit down and if I can get just a little melody, or if I can write one line and kind of get the ball rolling enough where it just kind of stays in my head throughout the day, then, I think, I don't know, maybe in some ways discipline like cultivates inspiration. Trademark that.
Trademark it.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen that in my own life of just feeling just like I don't have anything to say. But once I sit down and just start, it's just making the time and making the space. It does build on itself, and I don't really know fully how that works. There's a great little book called The War of Art. Can't remember who wrote it. You guys may know, but it's real short. And he talks a lot about the resistance. It's not from a Christian perspective, but it's like kind of almost like how we would talk about the enemy and the things that bind us and entangle us. He talks about this whole idea of the resistance. It's the thing that comes in and tells you, distracts you and pulls you away. And it's the way he describes it. I mean, I read it and I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And it's just this, I think a lot of time for me, it's just, I don't do it because I'm afraid. And me sitting down and fighting against that and creating is, kind of a small act of courage that I think that is liberating when I continue to do it.
Well, authentic creativity requires, this huge emotional investment. It's bearing part of your soul, part of your heart. And even if it's just you seeing it at first, I think it does well up these fears of like, even if I'm just releasing it into the air at this point or on a piece of paper, like there's something out, inside of me coming out. And that can be freaky. That can be scary. And I think it hits on artistic buttons in us to be like, well, if it doesn't come out, it's not real. So I'll just keep it in for a while. Or even if I'm the only one who sees it, and if I think it sucks, then I guess again it plays on all our insecurities at the same time too. So I think there is a fight of saying, no matter what. I had this friend, a good friend of mine, is a pastor friend of mine, and he's written a couple books, and he always used to tell me he had to make himself sit down and write, even if he didn't know what he was actually going to write. So he says, I can show you like Word documents of me writing things like, I don't know what to write. I'm not sure where I'm going, but I'm writing. And he's like, you just get it flowing. And then eventually you can go back and clean it up. But it's something about, intentionally engaging in that creative process that gets some of the junk out of the way and creates that path for that to flow. So
well, don't we think, spiritually speaking, that in emulating God, we're doing this really powerful thing that God's created us to do, to create, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that he instituted for us to do on this earth. And when we're actually going about it, when we're intentionally going about it, there is going to be this fight, this spiritual fight. And I'm just like thinking about it in my head, like the wheels are turning in my head because I don't know, like it's starting to all make sense. But so to me that totally makes sense. Why I would want to avoid it, because it's something that I was created to do, and and the enemy, of course, wants to keep us from doing the things that we are created to do. Mm-hmm. I just now I'm thinking like, man, all that time I lost not writing and being obedient. And I wonder if it's more for an artist. It's this thing of like being obedient to the Lord in creating and sitting down and being intentional, and also kind of spur of the moment as well, and having and emphasizing more value on it, like your pastor who tells you to carve out time and protects you. We all need that as artists.
Yeah. I mean, one of my elders, recently, we were just talking, in the midst of the pandemic and, cutting stuff in our budget. Before I even said anything, one of my elders just said, hey, like we can't just throw out beauty right now. Like
that's right.
We've got to make sure that we're leaving space for Justin to continue to create things for our church. And gosh, that means a ton to me. I mean, to not only have a pastor, but to have elders in our church get it, who aren't just viewing things pragmatically, but who are like, man, our people really do need the beauty. And I mean, I think like any time of suffering, what are the things that often resonate with us so much? It's music, it's film, it's photography, painting. I mean, we often don't know how to value those things, but we know that they have value because they resonate with us in these seasons.
So that this environment that that you're so blessed to be a part of right now in your church with support of elders and pastors, what kind of fruit have you seen spill over into into your local church and community because this environment exists that you get to flourish in? What have you seen happen?
Well, I would say maybe the clearest expression of that has been something we do every Advent season called Winter Song. It began as this idea. Really, it started with kind of the traditional lessons and carols services, which are planting church did. It's more traditional in nature, even though I don't love the traditional contemporary monikers. They're not always helpful. But I was like, well, what if we did something like that, but brought in arts and kind of wrote some of our own music? And it became this kind of its own thing. And one thing I did, we wrote some music, but I reached out to local visual artists. A handful of them were in our church, but who had connections with others, and basically casted this very general vision. This was year one, and we created an art gallery for the night. So people would come, and there'd be the gallery, and then we had a music portion. But it has exploded since that first year. We do it at a music venue here, and we line the whole venue with original pieces of art. And now I have a theme every year. So 6 months in advance, I'll email all these artists and say, hey, here's the theme. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of direction. Like, I'll give a little blurb. Like, the theme last year was, what was the theme last year? Expectation. Or actually a better example, 2 years ago, it was rest. And it's just this short little thing on rest. And then we had all these artists paint pieces for the event. So it wasn't like, hey, if you've got something
right
that could fit this, I really was clear, like, hey, I want you to create something for this event. And then I actually, for the first time 2 years ago, got area musicians to write a song about rest. And we ended up recording an EP, and it was just a lot of fun. And so it's been one of, like, it's probably the biggest event for us as a church. We're not super programmatic, but it's kind of the big thing every year. And it's been neat.
That's collaborative, it sounds like, between different churches and artists in your area and your community.
It is very collaborative. Probably more like organically than like, hey, we're going to partner with this church and this church. It's just people that I know. I just somehow connect with these artists, and I say, hey, we'd love you to be a part of this. And so now, I think we had maybe 18 artists last year.
That's great.
It's really neat because we can fill the space up with art. We had 1 year, a guy did like a short film that was just on a loop. And that, it's just, what's been really neat about that is it has empowered the people in our church, the artists, and to say, hey, we really value you.
Yeah.
As art, like, and you have a place and you have a voice in the church. And I just think a lot of artists don't feel that way in their churches.
That is very true. Through our UA retreats and stuff, we're always ministering to people who feel that way, whether, warranted or unwarranted. That's what people feel. And that's something that drives us as a movement to help change. So I think good. The story of your the pastoral support you have hopefully is really inspiring for a lot of people to say, hey, we dream that in the local church, pastoral pastors and artists can work together in creating that culture and environment to where there's not wars. It's not these knockdown, drag out, power authority kind of struggle. It's, hey, let's work together to create this culture and environment where the beauty and the awe and of God is on display, and we're not relying on the famous artists to do it for us. So we're going to raise up and see who God has placed in our homes.
Exactly. Use what we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
God's given us.
Yeah. I think that's good. I just think we're all guilty of just falling prey to productivity and pragmatism. Like, we're only going to do the things and invest in the things that like create results. I think there's just got to be more room for beauty, and like beauty doesn't have purpose in the like practical sense, but I think there's just a huge like discipleship. There's a lot of room for discipleship too. And like, hey man, there is something beautiful about who God is, and creating more space in our lives for beauty and for mystery. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more edifying than we think it is. And
well, we need to redefine success, because this idea of what is success, whether it's generally in church life, in church leadership, and in art, we have this really skewed non-kingdom, not non-kingdom of God view of what success is in ministry and life and art, and that really needs poked in the eye and saying, this is not right. Like, what does it mean really to be, well, I can't really do quotes in this narrow thing. Successful.
Yeah. Tight quotes
all over here, but that didn't make sense. Successful. And it needs turned around, and we need to redefine what that is.
Dave, I think that's something that just kills all of us as artists. This idea of what success should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And we see others that have it, whatever we think it looks like. And we believe that that's where we should have gone, and we don't know how to attain that. So therefore we get discouraged.
Yeah.
And so I think also with social media, it's super hard, just because, it's how many streams you've got on Spotify and how many likes you have on Facebook and shares and all of that stuff. And that's just hard. I have so many musician friends, songwriter friends, artist friends who avoid the whole social media scene in general, just because they don't want to witness any of that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it pains them too much. And when they do put themselves out there, they get crushed. And so it is so difficult. The whole success thing is just, it's like a lie of the enemy. I'm going on that. Like, it's just, I see it so much working with UA that it breaks my heart, and I'm always like on the verge of crying. So there you go. There you have it.
I wonder, I mean, that's really good. And I wrestle with that in my daily life. Kind of this, like, if it isn't broadly known or used, then it doesn't have value.
Exactly.
It's such a heavy joke. Nobody can carry that. No one's meant to carry that. And it's crippling, and I think it plays on all the emotional buttons of the artist. And it's such a heavy, no one's meant to carry that heavy yoke.
Yes. And I just wonder too, if built into this discussion is like, I don't know, kind of a theology of beauty in the local church. Like, the things we're doing for our community, that it almost is like, my wife pushes against me a lot, because I find myself in this like pit of despair where I'm like, no one's going to hear these songs broadly, so they're not any good. And she's like, wait, like, but so and so from our church just told you how much it blessed them. That matters in the kingdom of God.
That's right.
And I think she's right.
She is.
She is. Yeah.
If there was any doubt in your mind.
Yeah. Even though she didn't have her head covering on when she told me, but.
Oh man, I'll give her a call.
Yeah. No. I think there's a place for us to talk more about, like, I'm not today necessarily, but just in general, like, about setting artists free within their local churches and their communities. Like, hey, yeah, we could write songs and record an album for our people that has value, and it's good, and maybe other people will hear it, maybe they won't. But like right now, I'm kind of like, I'm not being secretive on purpose, but I just haven't talked about it. Like, I'm recording a little album for our church. I'm like, man, I've got some extra time and I've got all these songs and it's going to be real. It's not going to be this real polished thing, but I'm like, there's a place for this right now. And I'm recording music for our church, and and I'm just giving it to them. It's not like, hey, go to iTunes and, not that that's bad. I mean,
right.
Monetizing things is not necessarily a bad thing, but if we're depending on that solely for value, that's dangerous. And,
right.
And so, yeah, I think if someone is feeling that, I just say, hey, what can you do that could really bless your local church? And how can you utilize the people that you have? And because I think we all have people in our churches that have those gifts and that our church needs. That's good. That gets my wheels turning.
You're speaking our language over here on the UA leadership side, because this is what we talk about. I mean, this is what we talk about, what drives us to do what we do.
Oh, that's good.
Talk a little bit about your songwriting projects you've done with your church a little more. Talk about the Rest EP.
Yeah, so it's maybe 3 years ago. I'd never done a worship project and somehow convinced our church to give a bunch of money to making a CD. And, at the time was just really, I was into the Psalms. I don't really like the Psalms anymore, but
been there, done that.
I just was really kind of in this place of thinking about what it means to wait on the Lord, and so much of my writing at that time was from the Psalms, and so I was like, hey, I want to make an album. And again, I didn't feel like I had to really convince the church to do it. Like, I had to come with a lot of kind of the logistics of how it was all going to work, but it was just really neat to bring a lot of our people into the creation of this thing. And I was really proud of it, still am. And that we haven't done any other worship projects yet, but I mean, I have a lot of ideas. I mean, I feel like I have 5 projects worth of ideas. And the Rest EP was really unique in that it wasn't, it's not a worship album. I reached out to some just singer-songwriters and bands in town that I knew were Christians, and it wasn't going to be like confusing to try to bring them into this dynamic of winter song and, from kind of a faith standpoint. But I reached out to them and just said, hey, I'd love for you to just write a song about rest, like wherever that takes you. And it was just really cool. And I had this kind of a secondary wish. I was like, man, it'd be really cool if we could record an EP. We all performed it at Winter Song, all the songs. And then somehow it just came together, and we got together for like 3 nights at a studio and just live recorded these songs. And it's just, but I really wanted to, even the production, to capture the idea of rest. So it wasn't this super polished, like, let's do a ton of overdubs. It was like, let's just kind of make this thing, kind of capture the emotion of rest and of space and imperfection. Yeah, it was just a really neat thing that came together. I'm really proud of that too. More for just the collaborative aspect of it. And from that, and from Winter Song, we've just had a couple people plug into our community who are artists who are like, man, who I think just a lot of that resonated with them, and they just wanted to be a part of it. But I'm kind of like, man, whether you come to our church or not, I want you to know that we really do value you, and like, we need you in our city.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, just it's a powerful thing to tell the local community, the city, the artists within the city that the church cares about art, because the church has failed at art for so long in recent times. And
Yeah.
so I think it is a really wonderful thing to see that coming back, where we've got some amazing churches pushing back against that and saying,
Yeah.
we care about art. We want you here. We value you. We care about beauty. We're willing to pay for it too.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's just such a beautiful thing to see that. And I start to get kind of emotional about it, but it really is, it's an emotional thing.
Sure. Yeah.
That took courage to make that Rest EP. I was just thinking about how that all came about, and that being sort of like that's my secret desire is to make this EP alongside all of this, and to actually take the plunge and do that too. With that whole project of the Winter Song project, like that's a lot to take on, and that's some incredible faithfulness to do it.
I have my counselor a number of years ago. She said, you got to stay foolish. And what she meant is you got to keep taking risks. That for me, like the degree to which I take risk is the degree that I feel more and more set free from the anxiety and the depression. But it's hard because that's the last thing I want to do is take a risk. And so for me, like, I feel like my motto the last few years has just been stay foolish. Like when I feel that, like, I don't know if I can do this, I'm like, probably means I need to do it. And I've told a lot of artists that I'm like, just got to stay foolish. You just got to do it. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So probably going to get it tattooed across my chest. Stay foolish.
Totally.
Yeah.
Just get it in like Hebrew or something. You'll be fine.
Yeah, then it's more legit.
Yeah, backwards and from the left. Yeah.
I mean, do a lot of people see your chest? Like, would people see it?
Do a lot of people.
That's kind of a loaded question, but no. I do have some fishnet shirts, but
oh no.
Oh my gosh.
Man, that's for Lent.
They're easy to tear.
Yep. My sackcloth.
Well, we've been derailed.
Oh my gosh.
Depends how you look at it.
Awesome. Love it.
Man.
Well, I'm really hoping, assuming some of this pandemic stuff dies down. Rachel and I have been talking about getting her up here in the fall. So
awesome. Yeah.
Really
see
good.
if that'll do what?
I think that will be really good.
Yep. I do too. I've got a lot of interested people. So
good.
We'll see. I mean, just have to probably in the next month or so, just come back around and
figure it all out. I know everyone feels a little iffy right now, and it's, understandable.
Gosh, it's just wild.
It's very wild.
Given like the current situation and the need for beauty and the need for art, probably even more so now, like Justin, like how would you just like encourage artists who, during this season specifically, how would you encourage them and who have a desire to create in their local context?
That's good. This may be an unsatisfactory answer, but part of me would just say, just do it. Like, I think some of it just comes back to the discipline thing of like, just create space. Like you probably have more time and space than usual. And, don't even worry about whether it's good or not. My little box.
Yes.
But just do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't overburden yourself. Don't feel like, oh, I've got all this extra time now. I better make something amazing. Like, I just think kind of, again, like stewarding your pain and your uncertainty, using that time to like process some of what you're feeling. I mean, we're all feeling something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there are many people out there who are like, this is fine. Like,
Except my husband.
Yeah, except your husband. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like darken everything and just say, oh, we're all miserable. But like, I think there's just a lot of people who are like, I don't really know what, I don't know what to do with my hands. And I don't know. For me, it really was like, man, I think I'm just going to record an album. And that sounds ridiculous. I know it's not like, oh, do I need to record? But it's not as monumental as it seems. It really is just like, man, I just think I've got this batch of songs that I think could really bless our church, and I'm just going to do it, and it's not going to be like super costly, and I would also say stay connected to other artists. Like, you have friends that create, like, establish some sense of connection and accountability. I kind of use accountability loosely. It doesn't have to be like, hey, hold me to writing 2 songs this week. Like, just staying connected with people somehow. I just think there's a lot of life that we get from each other and the things we're creating and thinking.
I mean, we've done a few online creative sessions during the last, month and a half or so. And this is amazing, people just being able to say, oh, I get to see someone else's face, even if it's over Zoom and we're creating together, so I think you're absolutely right. Artists still need each other, because there's that instant feeling of connection of, hey, you get me and I get you, and together we can spur each other on to creativity. So that's
I think the other thing too is like being isolated like this, but then also when you're not isolated like this, I think every artist craves for someone to want to listen to their stuff. I mean, I'm just being honest here. I don't often get people coming up to me and saying, play me a song. Ever.
Right.
Like, I don't get that. And so I try in my own time, whenever I am traveling around or whatever, or if I'm with an artist, I will say, play me your stuff. I just want to sit here for an hour and listen to all your stuff. And I enjoy it. Like, it inspires me. It fills me up. I think it's good for them too. And I think like it's really good in this time. Wouldn't you say, like, when you're connected to other fellow artists, to just like listen to each other's stuff? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Like, what are you working on? I send you stuff, Justin, and you're like, whoa, yay, really cool. And then you send me stuff and I'm like, really cool. And so we've been doing that already, but it's really life-giving to have that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It really is.
Affirmation is great.
You need it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need people. We need a community. And when we don't have our ready community with us, we can't walk outside the door and, go do a hymn sing or whatever. We need to have it built in. We need to build it in. We need to make an effort.
Yep.
I just got this visual of a hymn sing where everyone's wearing masks. That'd be weird.
That would be really weird.
Yeah. It sounds strange too.
Oh man.
The Masked Singer,
I didn't know. I was thinking, who watches that? Because I would never watch that. But then I know
I do too. I don't get it, but apparently it's when you start watching, you can't stop.
Dave watches it. I can tell.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, on that note, man, Justin, thank you so much for coming.
Gosh, thanks for having me. It means a ton to be invited on this, and gosh, it was just good for my soul to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully we can just continue to encourage and inspire other, communities to create this kind of atmosphere and environment you're talking about. I just think that's really cool, and it's admirable, and hats off to you and your elders and your pastor for really, creating that environment. And then it'd actually be really cool if we did a part 2 sometime and had your pastor come on with you. You know how cool that would be, just to kind of chat about how you guys have curated that kind of environment, because that's what's going to really help inspire is that partnership between artists.
That's good. No, I like that idea.
So we'll have Rachel set it up. But man, yeah, thanks again, and thanks everyone for hanging out with us for this hour. And I guess we'll all talk again soon.
Yes.
All right. Blessings. See ya.
Thanks, Justin.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.